Hi, time for another Broadchurch recap video. This is for episode 5. I'll start off with the Joe Miller trial, going through a recap of what happened, then onto the Sandbrook, and then onto questions, predictions about where I think it's going to go. Starting with the Joe Miller trial, so we've got in court, we have Susan and Nige take the stand in this episode. Susan, after her bombshell last week accusing Nige of being the person that she saw dumping the body on the beach, she's questioned on that by the prosecution side and is kind of not really doing herself any favours. She comes across as really abrasive and has been quite difficult, you know, definitely not coming across in a way that is going to endear herself to a jury or make them think that she's telling the truth. She's asked about the threats that she made to Maggie. Remember in the last series you saw her like go into the newspaper office, threaten Maggie, saying that she knows men that could rape her. And she's questioned on that and denies it. You can see that the defence team think that it's been a mistake putting her up because it's not really helping their case at all. You see Nige take the stand and he's questioned by the defence team. He's there really to kind of corroborate Susan's story. And he also isn't really doing anyone any favours either. He doesn't seem like he's that prepared for the questions he's been asked. He kind of said at one point says like, I didn't kill Danny, and they're like, well, we didn't actually accuse you of killing Danny. And as I've said before, I reckon, you know, their whole aim is to set him up as being the person that moved the body, with Mark being the person that killed Danny. Outside of court, you see the defence team approach Paul, and he's been asked to give evidence in court on Joe's side, but he doesn't want to do it. They're there to convince him by saying, you know, he's one of your parish and he's in need. You see Paul speak to Becca and tell her about the fact that he had been visiting Joe in prison, but he thinks he made a mistake and that he did it because he thought that he was repentant, but he realises now that he's not. And Becca has like a really kind of selfish reaction to this and is basically just annoyed about the fact that he's now involved her in this because she knows that he visited him. Becca is the worst, isn't she? You also see Tom approach the defence team and say that he wants to give evidence for his dad, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Tom and Ellie actually met up at the start of the episode and they seem to be on okay terms. Like, he's obviously not completely happy about seeing his mum, but you know, they hug. Ellie does ask if he wants to move back in with her, but he says no. But yeah, at least it's a kind of step in the right direction, and you can kind of see that Ellie's mood is much happier through the rest of the episode, and I think that has made a difference, you know, being able to see her son again. She kind of feels like she's sort of getting back slightly to her old self. Mark and Beth, there's just a little bit of them in this episode. We see Beth kind of moving forward with this whole setting a charity up in Danny's name thing, and she's going with Paul's idea of this kind of like charity which helps rehabilitate sex offenders, and she goes to meet them at the church, but yeah, she's clearly not ready really to make that step to actually meet them, and it's still quite raw with the whole Danny thing, and she ends up running out of the church. She hasn't actually told Mark about this yet. He's not keen on the idea of the whole charity thing. I think he sees it as her clinging too much onto Danny and feels that she should be trying to move forward and, you know, think more about the new baby. But I'm kind of on Beth's side in this one, to be honest. Like, I don't think they should be forgetting all about Danny. Like, he didn't die that long ago. But they're obviously just both in different stages of the grief process, really. And yeah, luckily she hasn't mentioned the fact to him that this charity that she's setting up is about rehabilitating sex offenders, because I don't think he's going to be happy when he finds out. Going back to the story about the two lawyers, so we see Sharon go visit her son in prison again, and he's been beaten up. And we then see her confront Jocelyn about this, and turns out my prediction before about how Sharon had asked Jocelyn to help with Jonah, her son's case, and her refusing. She basically explicitly says this in this episode, that is what happened. And she's been like really aggressive and is kind of shouting at Jocelyn about this because she's really angry that her son's been beat up in prison and there's nothing she can do about it. And Jocelyn kind of fights back and says that the reason that she didn't take the case is because she doesn't like her enough, and also that she knows that if she'd lost the case then Sharon would have blamed her, because Sharon always blames people when things go wrong, which based on what we've seen so far, it does maybe seem like it's true. But yeah, the animosity between the two of them has kind of come to a bit of a head in this episode. And I'm sure it's going to only get worse in the next couple of episodes once we near the end of the trial. We also get a little bit more of a hint into Jocelyn's health concerns. So I've said in previous videos that, you know, I don't know if she is ill or if it's just like the stress of the case that's getting to her. But you see her asking her barrister to like do some like transcribing and stuff, basically getting him to do all of the work. And Maggie, the journalist, then comes in and says something like, haven't you told him? Which implies that there's something that's holding her back from being able to do that stuff. I think it's something to do with her vision, like is she maybe going blind? It surely can't be that she can't write or read, because to get to her position she will have had to have, you know, done exams and things. So that surely can't be what it is. But I think it's more likely that it's that there's some sort of her eyesight's failing or something, because we have seen clips where her vision's blurred and stuff. So that's probably most likely what it is. But again, we're surely going to find out more in the coming episodes. So that's kind of it on the Joe Miller side of things. Next week we'll surely see some more people go and take the stand. Probably Tom, and it'll be interesting to see how Ellie reacts to that. And yeah, we've still to see Mark take the stand. That might be this week, and it's quite clear from what's been happening so far that the defence team are really going to be pushing him as being the person that killed Danny. So we'll see how he deals with being in the stand and being accused of killing his son. On to the Sandbrook case, and as I mentioned earlier, we kind of see that Ellie's becoming a bit more like her old self, and that is most obvious in how she's dealing with the Sandbrook case. She is properly taking it on and wants to be the person that solves it. You see her build like a Carrie Matheson from Homeland style evidence wall in Alec's house. She seems like, you know, she's really kind of getting into it and is quite excited about working on the case. We see her go and interview the bridesmaid that Ricky was accused of sleeping with. And it turns out that she didn't sleep with him. They went to her hotel room, but they were only there for like 10 minutes, and then he left, which means that there's 2 hours that he's unaccounted for, which still puts him quite firmly in the frame as being the person that could have killed Pippa. There's also like a little bit where she mentions that he had a hip flask, and then Ellie kind of says to Alec something about, well, maybe he was going to drug her, you know, tying back in with the fact that Claire said that Lee drugged her. And I wouldn't have really put those two together. I would have just thought, well, it's a wedding, you have a hip flask. That seems fairly normal. Maybe that's just normal for Scottish weddings. But yeah, I didn't really think it seemed suspicious until Ellie said it. So yeah, we see Alec and Ellie talk to Claire about this whole drugging thing. Claire's not very happy that Ellie has told Alec about it. But she just explains a bit more about it. She says that she was at a friend's house, and then she came back and she had a drink with Lee, and he'd put Rohypnol in it. She then woke up, he was cleaning the house. She has questions as to why she didn't tell the police this, but she says, you know, she didn't want to believe that Lee could have been involved in that. But they're not really buying that and accuse her of still lying. And to try and smooth things over, she admits the fact that Lee was there last week and that she slept with him. And Ellie, or Olivia Colman, gives like this most amazing facial reaction to when she says that. It's just like the most disgusted look ever. So I mentioned in the last video that now that Ricky knows that Lee's in Broadchurch, he's probably going to turn up sometime soon, and he turns up in this episode at Alec's house, and he kind of apologises for what happened last week. Ellie questions him later about the whole case, and he kind of talks about what happened the night that Pippa was killed. He claims that he was looking after Kate because she was really drunk that night. And there's a bit of an awkward bit where Ellie kind of questions him on Lisa, the cousin, and asks if he fancied her, and he says she was my niece, which isn't exactly denying it, is it? So I don't know, maybe if something did happen there. I think I said in the last one that I thought maybe something happened with Lee and Lisa. But yeah, it could have been with both of them, really. You later see that Ricky goes to where Lee works and beats him up. Alec eventually turns up though and separates them. And when he's speaking to Alec, he admits that yes, he did once use Rohypnol. Not on the night that Claire is claiming, but he says that he did use it once, and that he got it from Ricky, and Ricky brought it back from Amsterdam. So another kind of twist in the tale, like what is going on there? Is there some sort of weird drug sex ring happening between these two guys? He also questions Lee on this Thorpe Agri service, which Ellie's found like in the whole evidence for the Sandbrook case. It's this company that's mentioned that is based in Sandbrook. Lee claims he hasn't heard of them before, but he says it quite unconvincingly. He's also asked whether or not he slept with Kate. He says no, but again we see a little flashback which indicates that maybe he did. So yeah, there does seem to be just very strange things happening between these two couples involving sex, drugs, and possibly murder. So I mentioned that Ellie's got this big evidence wall thing, and one thing she's kind of looking into is Lisa. Is she still alive somewhere? And she mentions that her phone last had a signal in Portsmouth on the afternoon of the killing. So she has a theory about, well, why would you be in Portsmouth? You might be getting a ferry to France. Who was in France? Lee. So could she have been running away to see Lee? And if that was the case, why was she running away? And Ellie suggests that maybe Lisa killed Pippa accidentally and that's why she ran. So that's another possible theory in there. So as part of the investigation, they go to try and find this Thorpe Agri-Service company, and it's like an old abandoned warehouse building, and they walk through and it's really like creepy, proper like horror film type creepiness walking through. It looks like an abattoir basically, and there's blood, and they find like an incinerator, and that's kind of how the episode ends, with like them opening up and realising that this is an incinerator and that possibly this could have been where Lisa's body has ended up. And one other thing on the Sandbrook side is Alec's health. So when Ellie was putting together this evidence wall, you see Alec is outside having some sort of episode, and he ends up like taking a pill, and it sort of looks like he calms down a little bit. He then goes off and visits Jocelyn and asks her to write a will, so obviously he's really concerned about his health. He's obviously not been for this procedure yet either, so I assume there's going to be more things like this happening in the coming episodes. He obviously is in desperate need of some kind of medical help, and if he's not getting it, then these kind of attacks and things are only going to get worse. So that's where we are with the Sandbrook story as well. The main kind of questions I've had in previous episodes, we're getting a little bit more answers towards them. With the Sharon and Jocelyn thing, my theory there has been confirmed that Jocelyn was asked to represent Sharon's son, but she refused. But there's still the question of Jocelyn's health and what's happening there. The whole Claire and Ricky thing is not really being confirmed yet, as to whether or not, you know, as to what the connection is there. And now we've also got this question of Lee and Kate. So, and the two couples, basically just what the hell's going on with both of those couples, drugs and everything, like, is that significant? Is that just a little bit of a red herring? On the Joe Miller side, I don't really have any big questions. Just want to know what's going to happen really in court. I mentioned last week that I was starting to think that maybe he was going to be found not guilty. Now I'm not so sure. I think he probably will be found guilty. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens when we've got Mark in the stand and to see how he kind of deals with the questioning, because I think it's really going to come down to how convincing he can be. If he's thrown by accusations of him being the one that killed Danny, then it might make things worse. Like when Beth was questioned and ended up having to admit about Mark having the affair, like she didn't seem like she was prepared enough for those sort of questions. So if he is similar and goes in and is kind of like completely taken aback and isn't able to deal with those accusations, then yeah, it might not go very well for him. And on the Sandbrook side of things, I don't really know what the hell's going on now. There's just so many possible things happening. They've mentioned about this like stalker that was on the estate at the time, and we've not really delved too much into that yet, so I assume that we're going to find out a bit more about that soon. There's only, what, 3 episodes left now until the final. But yeah, it feels like there's just so many loose ends that need to be tied up, so I'm sure, so we're probably going to have quite an action-packed couple of episodes, which means there's going to be so much for me to have to talk about in the next few videos. So yeah, look forward to that. As always, leave me comments below if you've got your theories as to what's happening, or if you disagree with any of my thoughts in this video. And yeah, I will see you in the next video, probably next weekend. Bye! It was basically, the whole episode was really about pinning it on Ricky, and I just think it's too early for that to have been revealed if that is the actual outcome.